Good morning, everybody at Mysterium 2021, and welcome to the Myst IV panel. We've named the panel Setting the Mood. That was Geneviève's idea, actually, for the panel title, and that'll become clear why as we go along. I would like to welcome our very special guests. We have Meinert Hansen, who was art director and senior concept artist for the beginning portion of the project, and probably a huge portion of the project. Brian Wrench, who was actor extraordinaire who played Cirrus and did a wonderful job. And Geneviève Lord, who was one of the producers on the project and whom you remember from Mysteria in the past, most notably in Toronto, where it was all about Myst IV. And last year she appeared on a virtual panel with us as well. Welcome, special guests.
Hi.
It's kind of interesting. We have somebody, well, four of us who worked on Myst IV, and each of us in a completely different part of the project, right? Like Geneviève was kind of leading all aspects of the team. Meinert, you were all about the vision, the visuals and the vision of the project and design. And Brian, of course, you got to be in the game. So my first question actually is for you, Meinert, and as you start to answer, I'd love it if you would just introduce yourself and tell all our watchers a little bit about yourself. And so, Meinert, what is your background before you came to the project and since Myst IV? Tell us
Okay,
about yourself.
sure. I started out in traditional animation. I worked on animated cartoon series and TV commercials. I did about 24 TV commercials, and I worked on um, I can't remember how many series, but just Saturday morning stuff. And From there, I went on to work in visual effects, and it was from the visual effects experience that. Of course, visual effects and games were kind of working side by side, but not in contact with each other, So I got into feature film visual effects. So I worked on a few movies there, and when Myst came along, that was around 2003. I did some storyboards for a few. Uh, I think I was working on a feature film called The Blue Butterfly, and I think it was right after that. But after Myst, I set up my own company so I could freelance, because that was uh, uh, a big break in between 2003 and 2004, where I set up a company and I just started freelancing. And then I started to get feature film work, and I worked on 300 and the Spiderman Chronicles. And what was interesting was the work that I got from in feature films. A lot of it, I feel like Myst prepared me for it to a certain extent, because when you're designing for a game, you're creating an entire world from scratch. Whereas if you're working on a movie, they've got people who are going off and getting locations and props and all that kind of stuff. Well, and,
Right.
so that was it was a good preparation. It was also I was just looking at the artwork recently, and I well, last night, and um, and I noticed that my Photoshop skills weren't up to scratch yet. And it wasn't until after Myst and I started to take on very heavy projects that my abilities really kind of ramped up. And I would say Myst 4 was the last project where I did most of the work on paper, which is, kind of.
So, were you using the onion skin paper for a lot of it? Because I
Uh,
have I have a stack here of stuff, and I think you probably did it. Remember, Geneviève, we had that pile of concept art and art. I think my daughter has it now because she's an art student, but we have several of your pieces kicking around here for
so
sure.
that's where they are. Yeah, some
Sorry.
of it was tracing paper and watercolor paper, and
Right.
I drew on whatever I had, So that was fun. Um, but it was yeah. So If we have time today, I have a slideshow and I have a bunch of drawings that have not been shown to the public from that project.
Oh,
Ideas that were abandoned, or
Absolutely.
you know,
Actually, that was one of my questions for you later on, where can you tell us some of the concepts and designs that didn't end up making it into the game? So that's
sure.
just excellent.
Hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and since then it's been mostly feature films, and now I'm teaching full time, but I still take on small contracts here and there. Last big feature was Arrival, and had an
Right.
incredible time
nice.
working on
Which
that.
I saw twice in the theater because it was so good.
Yeah, it was great. Um, and I've got a few small projects right now I can't talk about. A lot of NDA stuff. I find
Yep.
the last few years, I've got like about 5 projects I still can't show any of the work from, because it hasn't
Oh,
been released or it's been changed or whatever. But um, but eventually that stuff is gonna get on ArtStation at
and
some
lots
point.
of things delayed by 2020, I would imagine that
Oh
you
yeah,
would have been able to talk about by now.
yeah, that's it.
Well, we're glad you're here. Um, Brian, Mr. Wrench, sir, I'd like to know, when did you decide you wanted to become an actor, among other things? I know you're many more things than an actor. So please tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into acting and when you decided to do that, and what you've been doing since Myst IV as well.
Great, sure. Um, I guess I was about 12, and like it's kind of the stereotypical story of the actor or comedian, because I did comedy as well, who was a little bit shy, a little bit reserved, and then has an opportunity to kind of do something, to kind of break out, to be somebody else. And it was 12 years old, and my English teacher was doing a production of The Imaginary Invalid. And at 12 years old, I was cast as the lead character, Argan. It was like this crotchety 70-year-old. So that was really fun to leap into somebody completely different and to basically astonish the high school, because it's kind of like the shadow moving around the halls, for a while. And then suddenly I'm on stage. So that started the bug. But that kind of went underground because I thought, can I really keep doing this? I did like working professionally, didn't really connect with me. But luckily in university, I got to do improv. And improv is a great way for you to keep breaking out and to keep on, being other people. And from the improv, I worked at a comedy club for 25 years. And from
Wow.
there, I got onto CBC Radio. And that's where I got my actor credits, which you need as the Canadian Union in order to work as a professional actor. And then I got an agent who saw me in a play, a non-professional play. And from there, it just kind of, it's kind of snowballs. So I got to do a lot of voice work, over 200 radio commercials, voiceover for many TV commercials, live TV commercials, movies. My favorite always was theater, but it's the biggest input investment of time for the
Hmm.
smallest pay.
Right.
And all along, I was keeping on my second track, which you referred to, which is psychology. So I have a degree in English, drama, and theater, but also in psychology. And I was able to keep both tracks going for a long time as a professional actor for about 25 years. But then my private practice as a psychotherapist grew, and I wasn't able to keep them both going. So about 5 years ago, I segued completely into my practice and did a regretful adieu to the acting.
I think
But I
there
have enjoyed it. It was really an enriching thing.
I think there are a lot of Myst fans out there who would love to be psychoanalyzed by Sirius. I'm just saying, because I mean, in the games, he has so many problems of his own. It would be quite an interesting flip on that. I just wanted to mention, I don't mean to cut you off, but you were a voice actor on Deus Ex, on Far Cry, on Assassin's Creed. So you've worked with Ubisoft. You came back to work with them quite a few times after Myst 4, and um, so you obviously had a great relationship with Ubisoft. How has that been, being able to continue to work with the same company and probably some of the same producers?
That was terrific. I found that they're a great company, and I was really glad to keep being brought in for roles. And it's one of the things you have to do in these action games is a lot of screaming and yelling as you're, okay, now you're being thrown off a cliff. Now you're being thrown on fire. Now you're a
Now
machete.
your brother wants to kill you.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I've died 1,000 deaths through Ubisoft, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's a wonderful company, and everybody I know who's worked for it, and I know some people have done a lot of voice direction. They just really love it. They find a really a warm and welcoming community.
Excellent.
I would like to ask Katie, are they ever asking you, Brian, to like redo like, oh no, this dead cry was not like really convincing, like you have to like again and again 50 times until you get it right?
Oh, well, even if you get it right, you still need a lot of different takes. They don't know which one they're going to use. So you literally are just, they give you nice breaks and they give you hot tea and lemon and honey, but you literally are in a booth yelling for basically 4 hours.
Right. I heard M. Night Shyamalan say you do 50 takes and you might use number 1, but you might use number 37. So you have to take all 50, even if it looks perfect on the first one. You never know.
Yeah.
So Geneviève, what were you doing before Myst 4, other than being a Myst fan, being an avid gamer, having 2 gorgeous little boys? What were you doing before you came on to the Myst 4 project, and what was it that led you there? Because I know you took over for Catherine Raw when she went on maternity leave, and so tell us a bit about how that opportunity arose and how you snagged it.
I'm not sure if I didn't speak about that already, but in short, I was a IT director, and then I went with my husband was an expat, and we went to Sweden and Spain, and I just stayed with the kids. And I tried to play golf and play bridge like a good expatriate wife, and it was a disaster. So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna continue playing game. That's what I do. And when I came back in Montreal, I didn't want to work in banks again. And I went to somebody who advised me, why don't you become a producer? And so I applied for like quite a length of time. And finally, through some kind of crazy email that I think I mentioned already before, I ended up at Ubisoft because I had played all the Myst and read the books. I really loved the environment. It was a steep curve to come on such a project like so, but I think I did help, and it was really amazing for me to see, the whole project evolve. I was something that was interesting is that at the time we were integrating movies into the game, like clips of movies. And I remember the animators, they had such a hard time. For example, there was a time when somebody's hand was on a door handle, and the animator to get that hand exactly on the door handle was such a problem. It like took forever to make it happen. And now when you see they're using game technology in movies, so we flipped around completely, and I think Meinert could speak more about that. But it's amazing to see how we were kind of like at the forefront of a technology that has evolved in another direction and very successfully.
Meinert, when you were working on the game, the community had no idea that Myst 4 was in production. That's
right.
It kind of arrived at Ubisoft from another team, and I don't know how much of that original game vision was even kept, which is a long question for another day and another panel. And just for a couple people out there that have asked about it, we have asked people from Dreamforge to be at Mysterium for a few years, and they're not quite ready, but one of these days I think we'll probably be able to get them. But so Meinert, when you were working on it, you didn't really have a chance to show anything to the community or even hint that it was out there, get any kind of feedback. One of the things Patrick Ross said is the communication between the team and the community and how they fueled us to give it our all was key in his work. So you didn't have that. So do you remember early on trying to assess, you know, the community and reactions to things and, you know, deep loves of things without being able to go to them, how did you and the team, you know, try to use the community's love in the game, I guess?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I came in as a Myst lover and as a user of the game. I mean, I was really thrilled to be asked to work on it, obviously, because, you know, Myst was the first video game that I really immersed myself in and was fascinated by. But at the studio itself, I did not have much contact with the outside world in terms of the community as such. You know, it was just the team. And I remember the first day I was there, and I don't remember the person's name. He gave me kind of like a breakdown of what, you know, kind of a history leading up to the story. And he spoke to me for about an hour and a half, and I was like dizzy afterwards because it was so much information. It was like this huge dump of info. And it made me realize how deep the world was in terms of the backstory and all the characters and everything else. And I said, oh my goodness, how am I going to live up to this? You know, it was very, very daunting and very intimidating at the time. So it's kind of like we had to sort of start from a clean slate and work from there. And so it's like, okay, we're just going to start out with Tamana and Atris's world, and we're going to build out from there. And what was really interesting is the team was really interesting. A lot of them had never done a game of this scope before. So it was quite a diverse level of players in there. But the game, the puzzle designers, the people who were designing the puzzles in the game, they were too smart for us. I'd never seen this before. We had to redo the puzzles so many times because we said, this is unsolvable. We can't do this. I can't figure this out. I don't know how to do this. I did the map of Tamana, I think, 18 times. I had to redo the entire map of the world 18 times because, well, if somebody flips this handle, then that thing happens, and then this happens. Oh, we have to move this over here. Okay, so now if this is closer, and then if we get rid of this bridge, it was an unbelievable Tetris game of trying to connect everything. And the story too, you know, the story was evolving and changing because of the puzzle work, you know, so it was one of those things.
Well, Geneviève, it must have been a balancing act because you came on a little bit later, and so a lot of the puzzles were probably in the game, or so it's such a balancing act because Myst is tough. A lot of people out there who started to play Myst, you know, had to get a hint or never finished. You know, whenever we talk about Myst in social media, there's a lot of comments from people saying, I tried that game, I never solved it, or I got stuck in an age and never came back. Obviously, everybody watching right now has solved all of Myst's puzzles in every single game, but for Myst IV, I needed hints, definitely. I'm happy to admit that. So what was that like, the balance between it being too difficult but solvable, because you don't want to hang people up or have them frustrated?
I think our priority was not to frustrate the Myst fans. Like we knew we had a legacy that we had to conform to, and we couldn't let the fans down. So that whenever there was any kind of concern, or we were always saying, okay, what would the real Myst fan want? And that was the decision that was made.
Yeah. So, Brian,
I must admit, sometimes they were some of the puzzles are a bit tough, but
yeah, to this day,
we figured that's what they wanted.
Yeah, I'd rather they're too difficult, and because you can always get a hint, but if they're too solvable, that takes the fun out of it for Myst fans. Brian, had you played Myst before you came on the project? Did you know about the game at all?
I'd heard about it, but I wasn't, and unfortunately to this day remain not a gamer. I think I'm afraid of the puzzles and not being able to do very well at it.
Right.
But so, I just kind of plunged into it. A little kind of anecdote. There's someone that Meinert and I know it in common, who's an actor named Robert Higdon. And he went up to audition for it as well. And he was a huge Myst fan.
Aww.
And he was so hoping he would get it. And he was so disappointed when he didn't. But it felt like a bit of turnabout and fair play because a few years before, he'd gotten a role where he played kind of an Anthony Perkins and Psycho type role. And I had always been told at that age I looked just like Anthony Perkins.
You still do. You still do. That would have been perfect for you.
So he got that role, and I got the Myst role, as you're able to call it even.
So that's fair.
Well,
when you were auditioning, tell us a bit about that process, and when you knew you had the role, because you were mentioning in some of our notes that that it's a fun story about the moment you knew or figured you had it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, initially, as I say, I wasn't a gamer, so they give you a little bit of background, but all I really had was the scene. And the scene was where I first meet the player. It's like, oh, it's you. And so the scene is kind of like, it reads as kind of one thing, and you could play it as one thing, but I knew that this character was, I don't know if I knew, because I only had the one scene to go on. I don't know if I knew that he was going to end up being more than he seemed, but I thought, I think there's something a little bit sketchy about this guy. I think something a little bit sinister about him, but he's telling this story about, oh, I know you've seen me do this, and I know it looks bad, but I'm really a good guy, and this is what's going on. And I thought, if I play that all the way through, that's all people are going to see. So I began with my initial, oh, you've seen, here you are. But then this moment I just say, look. And look is an interesting word. It's like a kind of a but or an if. It's a conjunction where you can take in a different place. So it's like, oh, it's you, this has happened. And then I take a moment to say, look. And then I just thought, I'm going to kind of like slide into what I think is going to be part of the character later with something more sinister. And when I did it, the casting director, I could hear kind of like a, the first person who'd gone in, who'd used that word to kind of pivot the character. Mm-hmm. And then I was brought in to do the scene for the director, and it was the same thing, where they said, you know what you did? They really like this one, to see it live. So I just kind of had worked on it a bit more. But still that, I'm kind of flustered, I need to know something, but then look. And I could hear the director also at the moment go, ah. So I felt like that was the moment where I got it. When you hear an audible response from a director, because they're used to, they see the same scene over and over again, mm-hmm. and you can give them something different, and you can hear it, that you're really in serious consideration at that point.
Serious consideration. Yeah. I apologize. Well, it sounds like and memorable, right? Like, that kind of pivotal moment. Then it stands out when they go home at the end of the day. You want that any one moment to stand out in their minds. Well, it worked, and the head tilt is great because it is reminiscent of Robin Miller playing Sirius in Myst. Did you go back and look at his pieces at all?
Unfortunately, it wasn't available. This was really pre-web, very developed web. I think it's pre-YouTube as well.
Sure.
Wasn't anything. I just had a little bit of the material that they gave me, and I spoke to my good friend Robert Higdon, who knew the game, and then the director was there to kind of,
Well, shout out to Robert, because you got some great coaching, and you did a fantastic job. So thank you for that. So Meinert, you've worked in TV and film, and both animation and live action, and in games, of course. Which is your favorite medium, if you have a favorite, and why? What's your favorite as far as being able to express your art?
My first love is illustration. So whatever involves coming up with drawing and painting doesn't really matter to a certain extent. It really depends on the project, I think, more than anything else. But I would say film was probably the most satisfying in some ways, because although the hours are long, it's like 12 hours a day, for 6 months or whatever. The thrill of designing something, then walking down on set and seeing it there, there's nothing like that. It's hugely gratifying to see your work come to life, and then to see it on the screen. Mm-hmm. The only problem is that it is that, I don't think I could keep up that pace of 6 month chunks in a row for too long. Your creative juices kind of reduce. You have to hit the ground running, and you have to create right away. I love working in games. I really enjoyed working on Batman, Arkham Origins. That was really a lot of fun. The only thing is, it's the exact opposite of film in some ways, because it's like a 9 to 6 job.
Right.
and it's very
Right.
regimented and very kind of, I think it's more corporate. And I enjoy the freelance aspect. It's like I'll draw things, you pay me, the end. I'm not involved in the meetings. I'm not involved in the, the day-to-day, clusters of groups that have to sort of connect to each other. If I can go off and
Stand-ups, yeah.
if I can go off, put on my headphones, listen to music and draw and paint, then I'm fine. That's kind of how I like to work. So for me, I feel like this is going to sound terrible, but I feel like, I love playing games. I play games all the time. I feel like I'm almost too old to actually work in it now, as a
You're not, but okay.
I know, but I feel old when I'm in there, because it's like, oh yeah, I used to do this kind of job.
Sure.
Because when you go out and you freelance and you're taking on contracts, there's a certain freedom that you have, and it almost feels like I've done the corporate thing for so long that I can't do it anymore. It's great for young people. In fact, a lot of my students end up working in games, and it's wonderful to see them thrive and watch their careers rise and stuff. And so for me, there's something almost more pleasurable about that, seeing them do the get their success in the games, than me being in it, in some ways. Then I can play the game and I can say, oh, look, you did that. That's great.
You've made the transition to mentor then. That's great. Yeah, that's excellent.
And then it's the same for me, because I'm also in charge of students. I love it when they say, I'm working on that game. Oh my God, I so want to play that game. You tell me which piece you did, and it's really fun.
Yeah, Geneviève, talk a bit about that. Like, during Myst IV is when we met the people at Champlain College and started to talk to them about the game development curriculum they were started. That was pretty new back then. I mean, now it's almost 20 years ago, but it's when we first met Anne, for example. And just talk a tiny bit about what you've been doing with the college.
Well, so it's Champlain College of Vermont, not to be confused with the one in Montreal. And they were really at the edge at the time. Like, they were one of the first one who had a complete curriculum, programmer, designer, artist. And then they added producer, and they continue improving. Like, now they just created sound design, and they have another one that includes marketing and all of those kind of peripheral
those silly jobs that someone has to do.
So I've been with them maybe 12 years or something like that. And yes, it's amazing to help students, make it in the industry. And it's something that I really enjoyed. Of course, I haven't had any student for a year now, because the border was closed, but I should have some of them coming back soon.
Good.
And so it will be exciting.
Good.
Also, I have to say, maybe I shouldn't, but I have more time to play since I'm in academia as compared to being in production.
Of course you can say that. You're in front of
no time to
we
play.
all understand. We all understand if you have the choice of taking one job or another, you'll take the one that allows you to play more video games in your spare
I don't know if I would say that, but it was one of the hidden benefits of going to academia, is that I'm playing again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it sounds like it would have more regular hours, say, than some of the bigger projects.
Well, I always felt really bad about, telling the teams, okay, now you all have to work all night, and then you go home. That's not something I would have done. At the time, there was still a lot of crunch. I've heard that it has improved a lot, and I hope it is the case. But, the beginning of the gaming industry was hectic, to say the least.
It was.
A lot of those, when you see the team at Myst, they were people who were architects, teacher, translators. Me, I was IT director. We were learning as we were going, and it was hectic. I think now the age of the people industry is a bit higher. They have kids. The technologies are a bit more solid, and the process. So slowly and surely, it's calming down, and it's more.
Oh, now it is, yeah. Yeah,
it's still exciting, but less hectic.
Back then, you and I were considered pretty old for the industry when we started, because there were, and probably you too, Meinert, you know, to be in our 30s then, that was old. We were with a lot of late teens and 20-somethings. So yeah, the fact that we had families established and stuff was so different from everybody else on the team, like, yeah, who were staying till midnight. So Brian, when you were, so you've done acting in theater and film and obviously voice and video game. What are the limitations or differences of working on a video game compared to, say, acting for film or on the stage?
Acting for film is very similar, at least in this video game project it was, because basically you're shooting the scene. You usually in film you have another actor to work with, and more I think has moved to green screen, but that was maybe my second experience with green screen.
Oh, wow.
So in the video game at that time, you're really creating a lot. Actually, no, that's not quite true. There was a lot of to the camera. There was a lot of voice stuff. I think I do definitely have a scene with Yusha, and I have a scene with Akinar as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the conflict, but a lot of it's just kind of like interacting with an environment, which I don't know if the sketches existed, but I didn't know. I didn't have a visual. Where am I? You're on the edge of a cliff. Okay. Later I saw that I'm going out on a thin precipice, and
right.
But I didn't really know. So you're having to create a lot. You don't really have a lot to bounce off of in your surroundings or with another actor. And in film you do. With this project, though, I felt it was pretty high stakes. The director was good, and that he didn't rush. There wasn't a lot of pressure that I've seen on film sets. On film sets, the pressure can just get crazy because there's so much money at stake, and everything just has to be perfect. So there's trade-offs for all of them. In film, you have more to work with, but in the experiences I had, it was very high pressure. And this, maybe because of the director, maybe because of the project, we're able to really kind of flow into it without like, okay, deliberate and move, and no, that's not what we want, and we have to get going. You know, it's like,
right.
That's good, make it bigger, make it smaller, you know, it's pretty much the main directions. But that was a difference I found.
Did you get to keep the costume?
No, I didn't. And actually, the costume, for the costume fit, I don't know, I don't think I gained weight, but between the costume fitting and actually showing up on set for the costuming, I couldn't breathe. They put me in this like tunic, and you know, I don't know if I'm holding my breath in a lot of the scenes, but I thought the costume, like every element you have to work with helps you. And obviously the costume helped me, but it was like physically constraining. And maybe, who knows, maybe they kind of worked with it because he's been a prisoner on this world for so long, and I was a bit of a prisoner in that costume. So maybe that helped with some of the frustration. But no, I didn't get to keep it. I loved it visually, but certainly would have wanted to get back into it.
Dark Shocks in Twitch chat just said, no wonder Cirrus was so angry. Do you know where those costumes went, Geneviève?
Yes, a lot of the costume and the props went to London because the Tate, if I remember well, the Tate Museum was doing an exhibition on gaming as arts, and there was fundamentally an exhibition on Myst IV. And the last I saw those costumes and props, including the egg and everything, was at the Tate Museum in London.
Okay.
So after a long time, you know, when we prepared the Mysterium, I contacted Ubisoft Paris and asked them if they had recuperated them, but there wasn't anybody who was there at the time, so they didn't know. So God knows where that is. Maybe somebody's going to put their hand on them suddenly. Maybe we should contact the Tate Museum. Maybe they have it.
Yeah, we should. We'll get Philip to contact them for the the Myst documentary. He can look into it. He has researchers that help do that stuff. Yeah. So Meinert, of all the worlds you've helped bring to life, from concept to, you know, to final visuals or any part in between, tell us about your favorites and why you like them the most. I know what I know what mine are. Like I would probably pick Spiderwick above all of them. Sorry, Myst, but
Yeah,
and Myst
that,
4 would be a
I,
close second, but I love that world.
yeah, Spiderman Chronicles was one of the most satisfying projects I've ever worked on because I did a lot of stuff on there. I think at last count I did about 280 or 300 drawings for that movie. And
Amazing.
what was wonderful about it was, first of all, the production designer. I was a huge fan of him because I worked with him on 300. He'd done The Rocketeer and he did E.T. and he's been nominated for Oscars. He was like, a mentor to me in many ways. So I really wanted to give my all on that particular project. And I was so hands-on, and that was what was fun about it. Was I was able to design and develop everything, visually from house exteriors and interiors to the props. And some of the props were physical, and so sometimes I was bringing in my own stuff from home and building things, and saying, hey, how about this, maybe this is going to work, and so that was really fun. So every day was like, I'd go home at night and I'd be thinking about what I was going to be doing the next day, which it was on my mind 24/7 all the time. So that
Wow.
and then walking on the sets, they just blew me away. It was a beautiful production design. And Tony DiTerlisi, the author,
Yes. Yeah.
wrote the book, we got along really, really well. I subsequently did some extra work for him on other projects, just helping him out with a couple of things. But we really got along really well. And
he's a lovely person.
oh, he's just one of
I've
the
had
nicest
some
people I've
contact
ever
with
met.
him, and he's just one of those people who, despite being pretty well known for what he does, he's very approachable, which I'm finding, by the way, with all of you today. So I really appreciate that. Like, you're all leaders in your field and have excelled. And yeah, it's just fun to have a nice rainy afternoon Saturday chat with all of you. And just, I love when you can approach people and just talk to them about what they've done, and they can share advice and insight. I'm sure the people watching appreciate too, when they're not mad at me for liking Spiderwick instead of Myst IV.
I put that little slideshow together last night, and one of the things I was looking at, I was going, oh, this would have been so great if we took this idea and ran with it. Right. It was like there were a couple of the concepts I was thinking, that wasn't used in Myst. Maybe I'll do it for my own project.
There you go. Haha, Myst 6. Yeah, so exactly. Would you like to show us that?
Sure,
that slideshow now. It sounds like a great time for it.
Is it okay, like time-wise? Are we okay for that?
Stop teasing us and show us.
Yeah, okay. No, we have lots of time. We're good.
Okay, so this is going to be about 10 minutes or so, I think.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's the keynote.
No one will complain about seeing things that were early concepts for Myst 4 that,
Yeah, you'll see some things that I don't remember what's out there. So there's a few things in there that people probably went, yeah, I've seen this before. It's online, whatever. But I'll point out the things that I found that I was surprised to have found them in my collection. So I'm going to enter full screen here. Now, is there do you have screen share enabled?
Dan, can you enable?
Yes, I can. Yeah, it's good.
Excellent.
I got it.
He's on it. He's on it.
Good. Okay. So you guys all see that now?
Yes. Perfect.
All right. So
yep,
this was one of my favorite drawings, by the way, when I did the project. I really enjoyed doing that.
So is that Tomana or is that a different age?
That's Akinar's
oh yeah, okay.
shipwreck house.
Sorry, I'm looking at it on a smaller screen. I'm going to make it bigger.
Okay. So we'll start with Tomana. And this is kind of like one of the images that's been circulating out there for quite a while. That's a watercolor.
Gorgeous.
And these are early concepts for the buildings.
Everyone watching just wants to like walk up and go there and look behind that.
Yeah. These are probably the very first sketches that I did for Tomana.
Wow.
And when I was working on it, I was thinking I want to continue the Myst design
aesthetic,
exactly. And I was looking at Art Nouveau and the arts and crafts movement, and with just a little bit of a touch of there's a little bit of brutalist architecture in there too, but most of it is Art Nouveau and arts and crafts in terms of the style. So I was looking at Charles Rennie Mackintosh and designers like that when I was doing this. And there's this one here.
Oh, that looks so familiar.
Yeah, it's just a color pencil on color paper. That drawing is quite small, so when you see it big on the I'm looking at it and I'm going, ew, oh.
Well, yeah, if it's tiny, that's cool. That's the workshop, right? Atris's workshop.
Yeah, and this is these are some of the iterations of the map.
Wow.
Of Savannah from above.
Yeah.
One of the things I love doing is blueprints. So I can see now that I in terms of blueprints, I've really improved a lot. But you can see the difference between these two. Now imagine redoing this 18 times, from scratch. So that's the final one there. So the one on the left is the final map for Tamana. And then you have sketches of the gardens. And then front view, side view.
Oh my goodness, yeah, the rooms.
Yeah, that's Atris's bedroom. There's
the living room. That's fantastic.
Dining room. More
and
sketches.
We've been told there's no rush. People are really excited about seeing this.
Oh, great. Okay. So, yeah, I can see just from these scans that they were pencil on tracing paper. Normally, what I would do sometimes is do a blue line sketch like you see down at the bottom there, and then redraw on top of it. But sometimes I just left the first sketch as is and went from there. But I really enjoyed doing this. Oh yeah, here are two that haven't appeared anywhere. There's a crystal viewing device. Now I wish I had the other ones. I did like 4 versions of that machine. This is the only one that I seem to have found that exists. And I remember thinking about how it was going to work and how the gears would rotate, that big gear would rotate and how the levers would work and everything. And that's Yisha's room. At one point it was inside a tree and she would slide into it.
Cute. Oh, cute.
And part of it was underwater, and there was an underwater observatory that you could look and see. There were a hidden railway system in the water.
What? So she could, like, instead of the fish tank on the desk, she could actually have fishes as her under her floor.
That's right.
That's so sweet.
Like in Raven, an underwater.
Yeah, that's it.
I've never seen that one.
But when we think of, I mean, if you could be a child of Atris, what would your bedroom be? This is pretty great.
It's kind of like my own fantasy too of what I would want as a kid, So
yeah, sure. A little balcony and stuff. That's great. And is that the ship, like the little ship launching platform?
Yeah, the platform was the elevator.
Okay.
Elevator that went up, or it was an elevator that sometimes go sideways, sometimes go up and down. This is the water wheel, which I think I did a couple of iterations. This is the only drawing I know that I have of the water wheel. I think there was another artist, I don't remember his name, Patrick or something. Anyway,
Pascal.
It could be, yeah, who did this who actually designed the water wheel eventually.
Would that have been who that was, Geneviève?
If a concept artist?
Oh,
there was Angie and Stefan.
Stefan, that's right. Stefan, it was him. Yeah. And these are the observatory, different drawings of that. And then I believe that was Atris's home on bottom left there.
I'm getting TARDIS vibes from this, which I didn't in the game when I was playing it, but that's pretty cool. I love the details on Tomana. And I think it made a lot of people really happy to see it again after being there in exile. You remain true to what what Exile had kind of presented as the front and the entrance and the office in Thomann, and then we get to see kind of the rest of it, like what's going on behind, and that for me anyway was pretty exciting.
Exile was one of those games that I thought it was breathtaking. I mean, there were moments where I was sitting there, I'm going, okay, I'm just going to stop playing and just look around because it's so beautiful. You know, there were so many beautiful designs in that one. It was really good. And there's a view coming into the into Tamana, and these are storyboards. I did a bunch of storyboards for Maddox for the joyride sequences.
That was so fun. I mean, how fun was that? Like one of the best starts of a Myst game I found. Like just you're kind of, it throws you right into the action, and Isha being there talking to you, telling you all this important stuff. I mean, Myst III did the same thing, you know, compared to kind of the peaceful landing on the dock that Myst was, and even just, you know, getting your mission handed to you from Atris in Riven, and then all of a sudden in Exile, you think it's going to be this nice peaceful start to a game, and you're thrown into chaos, and then in Revelation, it's chaotic too. I kind of like that you have that imperative thrown at you when you get into the game.
Yeah. So then there's Savannah, which the event eventually became Haven Age in the final game, and that's the one that you know, is the boathouse thing.
Yes.
I enjoyed doing that one. And I came up with creatures.
Oh, nice.
Monkey kitty.
And
yeah.
totems. Stéphane Turgeon actually redid these totems. He did a beautiful job. He did a really, really great job on that. Those were my first sketches of what they would look like.
What I liked on this project is that the three concept artists, when I was there, had styles that were completely different. Like,
completely different.
Stéphane is kind of fairy, and you know, like left to himself, he's gonna just draw fairies and you know, big things all the time and beautiful. And then Angie was very gritty, and you could feel the texture. And
more
and you had
nice.
and you had such an imagination. It was like amazing, because I think you were like, you know, growing on each other and pushing each other.
Yeah. And there's
the ship,
that's a sketch of Akinar there, just off in the left there.
So was this an homage to the Stone Ship Age in original Myst, to have another ship, you know, to have?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think there was one of the ideas for this age was that if you were to look at it from above the island itself would be one vertebrae of a giant spine.
Okay.
That the idea was abandoned, but I love the idea of an island that was made of bone, and it, you know, there would be one moment where you were higher enough and you looked in and you went, "Oh my God!"
Right, when your perspective changed and you realized you'd been wandering around on a giant creature.
And I love that idea. It was eventually just, I think, kind of put aside just to concentrate more on the you know, the types of environment you would encounter while you were there.
Right.
Of course, you know, the scale of games is so different today from what it was before. You know, so.
Yeah, you were so limited back then.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, you could do so much more than Myst or Riven could already.
That's true. It wasn't just point and click, you know. So.
I remember at one point we had a date by which we had to release, and I went to see the boss at the time, and I told him, "Look, we need a few more people. You know, we're not gonna make it."
Right.
And he said, "Oh my God, you're close to 100. This is ridiculous. Look at the size of your team." And now when you think of the size,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now this is something that I've not seen before. This is a part of it was going to be like this mushroom like these huge mushroom domes with membranes that you kind of break through, and then you end up in this swamp. I don't remember anything else about this part. I just remember that.
I've never seen that.
No. It was an idea that was quickly abandoned. Okay, so we've seen that. Sirius's Age. Now, here's one that I found a bunch of drawings, and this one was never, this was a completely abandoned idea, which became the Spire Age in the final game, which, true confessions, I couldn't get past when I actually played the real game.
Right. So now, like, Brian, you can finally see the age in which you were stuck, I guess.
Yes, the whole thing.
And this is very
why you were so cranky.
Yeah. So the idea was, I love this idea that there were in the Arctic, sometimes you have these volcanic flues and then the ice freezes.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I ran with that idea and thought, wouldn't it be cool if we were in the Arctic and this ice age? And there was this whole story about Yisha being trapped in the bottom of this drill type object that drilled into the ground or into the ice layers. And there's Cirrus, by the way.
There you are.
And
in a much looser fitting clothing, I might add.
Yeah. And so you would be underground, but the whole thing was lit by a series of parabolic mirrors that would reflect the sun. And part of it would be crystal and part of it would be stone. And I had this idea that there would be a joyride through it on a monocycle. It's like the seat that's on a single wheel that ran through. And this was like Cirrus's way of navigating this world, which was kind of honeycomb in a way. These are wow. Now, bear in mind, I'm remembering it dimly, but I really enjoyed this idea. It was all about shape and geometry and lighting and everything else. And this would have been Cirrus's throne, which also moved through the world. And it was kind of a single wheel that was balanced with these rocks. And you would have to figure out how to move back and forth along the railing, which would be something like this. You'd end up in one chamber like this, let's say. And down below, there was a chamber of pipes that the wind would blow through, and you would have to move some levers so that they would all match the sound. And that was the puzzle, I remember. That's them there. Yeah, so you had these irises, and depending on where you put the lever, you would get different sounds. So it was a pretty wild age, but I really liked the idea of it. It was so different from other things that have been done before. So that's one of the reasons I thought it would be interesting to introduce something we hadn't seen. And then there was the main age. We called it the main age because we didn't have a name for it, but it eventually became Serenia. At one point we called it Octave, and another time it was called Tyne, which is this idea of pitchforks. Not pitchforks, tuning forks. You hit. There would be creatures that had tuning fork heads. Anyways,
the tines of the fork, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So those were the logos I came up with for what they would be, just for fun.
That was such a beautiful age.
Mm-hmm. So the idea of this age is that the whole thing is an abandoned hydroelectric dam. And what you see of the huts there is the mechanism, minus the gears, minus the rods, minus a whole bunch of different things. Like those would be like AC motors or something like that, and then they turn them into.
They've been repurposed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the concept, and the idea was that you had to restart the hydroelectric dam to get the power moving, and the whole village would rotate and rise, and anyway, it was really complicated and way beyond the scope of what was capable in games at that point. I mean, today you could probably do it, but I had a lot of fun drawing this one. This was one of my favorite things.
It's just gorgeous. And the final the final Serenia was one of my favorite places.
Yeah, it's
Just
beautiful.
visually,
Beautiful.
just so rich and peaceful, and
yeah,
it was a nice break in the game to have kind of zen moments there.
Yeah, as you can see, I don't see.
That.
I don't know if you see the mouse here, but so this would be the hydroelectric dam here, and this would be the joyride where you take this rail down under the water to start to get into the mechanism and start
Oh my goodness.
the whole thing, and
that's the symbol.
Yeah, there's the symbol, and that's the village, which would rise out of the water and rotate, and then these gears would click into place, and then the whole thing would be up and running. Oh, wow. So it's a wild idea.
The concept of that circle and the middle of the village was kept, right, Geneviève?
Yes, you see the symbolism of it. Yes.
Yeah. So these were some of my notes about it, and where these are the kind of things that I do when I'm coming up with ideas. I write down a lot of things, and I look for symbols and signs and universal concepts, so that there's an identification, or that people can somehow unconsciously pick up on things. So it's kind of my process a little bit there for the main age.
The little thing in the right bottom corner looks a bit like those toys that you have where you do.
Yeah, little top.
Yeah, the singing doll with spinning mouths.
Yeah, that's what it was based on, this idea that it would spin and there would be these mouths and it would sing. Yeah.
We have a lot of requests in the chat for these to be released to the community, maybe as a DLC after, so we can talk about that. And I wanted to just tell you that Brant Gurga said, poster worthy even as concepts.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Look at this. Oh my God. I have a special likeness for all the animals. You know, I have.
Of course.
Oh my God, it's so incredible.
Yeah, it was nice that we had, because the animals in exile were kind of, you kind of had one in a couple of ages, but I think Revelation was the first one that felt really, really alive.
Yeah.
Like nonstop alive. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it. Those are creepy.
Yeah, those were fun. Just quick marker renderings, just sketching, trying to come up with ideas for the people who populated the village.
One thing I would like to say is that the team of concept artists were so great, and they were also so modest. They were always, this is nothing, and I should be able to do better.
And it's all phenomenal.
You were looking at that, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really nice people to work with. And that includes you, Mina.
But it looks like so much love went into it too, right? Respect.
Yeah. Well, there's it's this idea that you want to live and inhabit what you're designing. So it's sometimes, every once in a while, when I'm designing something or coming up with a concept for a place, I get lost in being there, just getting the lighting and the feel of what it's like. And I think that's what I can tell when I've done something that works when I feel that way. If it's just drawing or scribbling, then it's a different idea. This one, I want to take this one and paint it, actually. I want to do a matte painting out of this, like a photorealistic version of this. I found this and I went, there's a lot here that actually works. So I'm going to try doing something with this.
So is this part of what ended up being Serenia then? This would have been Tyne? Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Is this one of your earliest ones?
It was halfway there, yeah.
Okay.
One of the early ones for sure.
Yeah.
What really works here is the contrast between the solid mass of the mountains and those sails that are very ephemeral.
Yeah.
So the contrast is really amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's it. I think this is the last one that I have here. So, yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Oh, with spice. This is cool.
Yeah. Thank you for showing those.
Oh, you're welcome.
I wish I could have just read the comments as you were going. People were, humility makes Art Deco better. I love the Art Deco vibes of the sketch at the bottom right. I love the mix of styles in the concept art. Just very awesome sketches and ideas. So just reading a few of the comments quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I would like to stress also the fact that each age has a completely different look. Yeah. So each time, including the research, the vibe, and that's the colors, you know, like Spire was more blue and white and others. So that first, it's a lot of work, but also it gives the richness. It's not unique to Myst IV, but it's really something that comes out when you look at the concept.
Yeah, everybody has their favorite age in Myst. Everyone has their favorite island in Riven, and certainly people will have their favorite age in Revelation as well, for the same reasons, right? Different people like different things. We have a really interesting question for Brian, which is, in your opinion as a psychologist, what would be the impact on a person who was alone for 20 years as Cirrus was?
Well, there's a reason that there's a worldwide movement to ban solitary confinement. It really falls into cruel and inhuman punishment. It's really one of the worst things you can do to somebody, especially over that long a period of time. He wasn't physically confined. I mean, that's the worst, obviously, solitary confinement, but he was solitary. And it just kind of leads to the degeneration, really. And already, I'm sure he's been identified by people with a bit of psychological knowledge as quite narcissistic and having the psychopathic dark triad. And I think that would just increase his sense of grievance, of injustice, of just make him more of what he is. Whatever barriers there might be, whatever like decency seedlings might have been, would just have been like totally blown away by that period. And I mean, if you really want to take it that far, you have to question why his father would do that. Was there not a better way?
Sure.
So, I mean, if you really want to go into the psychological underpinnings of the whole family, it's kind of a thing to do.
It all starts with, well, it starts before Idris with his father again, or maybe even before that. But yeah, I mean, I think too, it amplifies what's already going to go askew in you before you kind of are put into this situation. Like Cirrus and Akanar have very different ways of handling that kind of, as does Atris, who's trapped in Dunny, you know, in Myst. Everybody's trapped. Yisha's trapped. Catherine's trapped. This poor family, they've all been trapped. Good thing we're there to let them out.
Yeah.
So it's interesting in fantasy literature that you often have that concept of totally dysfunctional family, and often with a very dominating father in one way. I don't know if that's the right word to use here.
Or the mean uncle.
But yeah, because even though we kind of like him, still he imprisoned his children, as you say, in solitary confinement, which is something else. And when you read, for example, a lot of the book of our son, Scott Carr, with and the games and all the others, it's also a theme that comes back regularly, you know, of the father-son problematic relationship. And so it's interesting to see if that is something, a projection of the authors, or if it's just a theme that really speaks to them.
I think it's really kind of an archetypal theme, as is the competition, like the brothers really wanting to kill each other. It's kind of a Cain and Abel thing. And then there's in fairy tales, you have like the worthy sibling and then the unworthy ones. You see it in Cinderella with the stepsisters. And so Yisha, of course, is the favorite child and the good child. And initially, both brothers are bad, and it's kind of a redemption moment for one of them. And then Cirrus takes the role of really the evil one. But yeah, there's really interesting archetypal, mythic themes that run through it.
Mm-hmm. We do have one person named Nyctomorphia who especially following the slideshow, which I'm sure they loved, they were asking about the early version of Serenia known as Tyne, and about which there's very little information known. When was it decided? They're asking tons of stuff. Explain everything in the developmental history of Serenia in as much detail as you can. What was being considered about its story role puzzles that shaped what it ended up becoming, and when was it decided it was going to be an age that Catherine wrote? I don't know if between Meinert and Geneviève we can figure out that evolution.
Meinert would be the one.
Well, I left just as they were starting to tackle it.
Okay.
So what I remember is that although all three ages kind of were in development together, we had to go back and really concentrate on Tamana. It was sort of like, because they wanted to do have some part of the game actually ready. I think a vertical slice, they call that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to
for press and for
E3.
Exactly. For E3, exactly.
Right.
So what happened was we put all the ages a bit on hold before and went back and polished a lot of Tamana. Okay. So because it was kind of like our testing ground to see if the game is playable, if it's possible to do that. So what happened was, what you see of what I did was as far as it got for me in my stage. So I had left by that point. What happened was, and you know, it was more of a personal thing because I'd been working there for a year, and my father had a stroke near a few months before the end of the project, and I ended up being burnt out because I was the only one who could look after him up north, and I was driving from Montreal up north after work 2 or 3 times a week, and it was like 3 hours sometimes both ways, and so I got so burnt out I had to leave the project. And it's one of the reasons also that we negotiated having Pascal Blanchet, who was also more of a 3D artist, ended up taking over as art director. I said, please just give me concept art, because doing the art direction and the drawing was too much for me. I couldn't handle it. So I was subsequently pretty burnt out by the time I left the project. And so I didn't see what happened to Serenia. What happened was, we wanted to have a beautiful age where there were peaceful people, peaceful creatures. It's kind of like, let's get away from this conflict to a certain extent and bring the players into a more revelatory situation where there's, it's almost mystical in a way. And so we want to find a place where there was people lived in peace and harmony with the land. And so this is why I came up with this idea of harmonic proportion, the idea of musical notes and kind of connected with mathematics. And so everything worked on both sound and vision. So there was the octave, which the different notes, and the creatures who would resonate, and sometimes they would resonate together, and then the people would resonate with the animals. So there was this idea of resonance through the village, which was kind of like a unifying theme through the whole thing. That's what I remember. You have to remember also, I don't remember as much as we talked, because there were so many ideas thrown around. Now, when we were talking with the game designers, one of the things was that the game designers also proposed an idea where we are taken into a different, almost cosmic space.
Right.
And I think you know about that, what ended up happening in that.
Right.
But that was
the dream part.
The dream part, yeah.
Yeah.
That was controversial when we first came up with it. We said, do we do this or not? I remember having a lot of discussions back and forth. Some of the team weren't happy with the idea, and some were. Some just couldn't wrap their heads around it. Some were really 100% devoted. I love the idea because I was saying this is taking games to another level. It's getting into transcendence. It's getting into mystical experiences.
Sure.
Which, what other game has ever done that before? You know, so
and culturally, I have to think that, you know, that native culture was a part of that. We actually had a really excellent question about how the fact that it was made in Canada and in Montreal, Quebec, how did that have a big, actually Philip from the Myst documentary asked this, what was the influence that had on the art and some of the concepts and ages?
I don't think it had much, to be honest, because I think what we were trying to do was think outside the box and think of another planet almost, you know,
Sure.
like you had a society that lived in peace for millennia, you know, and they had their rituals and they had their day-to-day lives. What would they be like? And if it was all based on this hydroelectric dam versus the music and you know, there was a whole bunch of different ideas, but we looked at a lot of ancient hieroglyphs, and so we were looking at that. So maybe there was a little bit of Native American stuff going on, but it would have been more Navajo than it would have been Canadian.
Sure.
You know, and even then trying to go even further back to petroglyphs and cave dwelling and that kind of thing. So it was like, really, we wanted to get this feeling like it's really ancient and really different from Earth in some ways.
We had somebody ask how Peter Gabriel got involved. Do you remember that decision, Geneviève? Was it?
Yes, it was managed from Paris. So in Paris, there was a guy whose name is Didier Lord, but he's not family of mine.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, I spoke with Peter Gabriel, and they are willing to give us a song for that particular part of the game." And so we went. There was Jack Lang, the music composer. There was Patrick Fortier, the
Jack Wall,
creative designer. Jack Wall, sorry.
You're okay.
And myself, and then Didier, and we went to where Peter Gabriel had his, you know, farm spread studio.
Yeah.
And we met him. It was like pretty exciting.
Oh, he has a compound?
Yeah, he has a kind of, it looks like a mix of a farm studio, you know. It's nothing that looks wild, but it's kind of extensive, and there are lots of people. And we spoke to a number of people before, and then they discussed with him, and then he came, and he kind of mostly just said yes. It was so amazing to see him, you know. It's like, oh my God, I'm sitting at the table with a legend, you know.
Yeah.
Already working on Myst is working on a legend, and now I'm there sitting with Peter Gabriel.
Right.
It was impressive, and yes, that was a big highlight of the whole experience, definitively. And I love the song that they ended up giving us.
Yeah.
Well, giving us is not the word for it, but letting us use.
I wish I was there
sharing.
For that. I would have loved to.
Right. I do too. Like, didn't you go? We were on the press tour in 2004, and didn't you go see him right after that?
It could be. I can't remember when it.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was traveling all over the place.
So much, yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, what was your favorite part about working on Myst IV?
The suit, the too tight suit.
The too tight suit that made him naturally angry.
Well, at that point, I think it was my first. I think before and after the video game work that I did was just vocal. And so it was good to do the video game work with that other element as well. Yeah. And there's also where there was, I think, at least one day in a recording studio just doing his journal. So that was kind of what I was more used to, because I'd done a lot of voice work. I'd done a lot of industrial. I'd done voiceover narration. So getting into that was kind of more my comfort zone. But as I said, it was only the second time I'd worked with green screen. So that was kind of an interesting thing to do. And it's kind of a hybrid thing. As I said, taking it out of context, you don't really have often the other actor. You're not
Right.
off of anybody. You don't have
It's
a,
like working with the tennis ball. It's tougher, right? Because part of acting obviously is interacting and building on the reactions you're getting. So you
yeah. And
kind of
that's
have to
what
imagine.
why my favorite thing is really theater, because it's very immediate. You're with other people, you're spontaneously creating something together, and that's what improv is as well. Very little solo improv, but this was a kind of a solo thing. It reminded me, I was reading about silent movies, and what's been seen as kind of a cliche and maybe untrue about silent films is the director off the side of the megaphone saying, "You're looking very sad now.
Right.
Your lover's leaving," It's a little bit like that
The
because you
train is
look
coming.
exactly. So
Yeah.
the director isn't really like talking live while you're acting, but he's putting you into the world. Like, okay, so you've been left here a long time and you're feeling this, and around you is that. So, it really takes you back to the early days almost of film, where the director is really only lifeline to what is happening in the moment. And in other forms of acting, usually it's the other actors. You worked with the director before, but in the moment, it's the other actors who are giving you a sense of something happening live.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting aspect.
We have a fan named Bastico who I've known for many. You remember him, maybe, Geneviève? Bastico. Um, he asked, what was it like being chosen for the role? Did you need to do preparation? What was the kind of preparation that you took for the role? You mentioned talking to the other actor who didn't get the part, but who was a fan and who kind of gave you a sense of maybe, what Myst was. But was there other prep that you did?
There was no prep really that I could do. Again, there was nothing really online at that point that I could refer to. There were no books. There were so many moving parts, and I'm really getting a sense of it. Thank you, Meinert, for that beautiful presentation. I loved it. Amazing, beautiful visual work. So mine was like a tiny slice of that. But even the director like kind of had his work to do as far as he had his schedule and things to get going. So he's helping me with the moment. But as far as the overall, it was really what I could glean here and there. And I was talking about other people because there weren't really the reference materials that I would use. I'd done, which is rarely the case, I've done a movie where I was a historical character with John F. Kennedy. So there's so much research I could do there. I was in the Diary of Anne Frank, so much research I could do there about my individual character and World War II and what was happening in the attic. Here is like a little piece here, a little piece there, and then counting on the director to kind of help shape me as far as what is going on.
Right.
Katie, we mentioned the journal, and I think I would like to speak a little bit about that. Now, in every game, you have pages that turn. It's so common. Nobody is batting an eye about that. At that time, it didn't exist. So there were long discussions because, how are we going to do to have the feeling that you have a page, physical page that you turn, and, the script on it still making sense. And that was a huge effort that was put on that.
Are you talking about the functionality in the game? Like, because we had books in Myst and you could turn the page, but you didn't have any kind of animation. It just, the page was
exactly. And you didn't have the feeling that the page was moving, that it was like, it wasn't acting like a real page would.
And
so
they certainly weren't read aloud by anyone.
Exactly.
That
so
was new.
The whole, up to what point can we get with those journals? That was a big thing. So the team was always trying to push and do something that had never been done before.
Well, that was one of the questions I had written down for you, which was, how were you able to keep faithful to the Myst world, but still be innovative, because each of the games has innovated on the previous one?
Yes. Well, first the innovation was in the new worlds and the technology and the animals and the story. And then, as I say, some technical difference that we did for the game itself. but we didn't want also to directly like go too far away because,
Right.
you know, for example, it still was a click and point where, you know, we could have considered something else, but we thought, okay, we should move from that.
We had a good question, which was, which came first, the locations or the character arcs? And how did they influence each other? Like, I mean, I'm guessing that you would think about each brother. I mean, you had Tomana because of exile. That's just where Adris and Catherine and now Yisha were living. Baby Yisha, who was, you know, now 10 or 11. But when you were thinking about the brothers and thinking about the story, did the story come first or did the ages come first? Because in Myst, each age has a part of it that belonged, for lack of a better word, to each brother. Like you get a glimpse at who they are and their psyche, you know, by each of their scary rooms in the mechanical age or each of their bedrooms in Stone Ship. But in this, you gave them each their own age. That, you know, obviously they go there and it's not their age until they get there, but then what effects they've kind of done on the world around them. So what, I don't know if you know this, Geneviève, since it would have been closer to the beginning.
Yeah, that would be more Meinert if he.
Yeah, from what I remember, it was, you know, of course, in a game like this, a lot of the writing is kind of riding along with the design, because there's the story beats are more or less established. The characters are more or less established. So we have a sense of who they are and what their trajectory is. What happens around that, then, you know, we try to throw the biggest ideas at the walls and see what sticks, and then pare it down so that it matches the rest of the characters and their arcs. So they went through changes, partly because of the puzzle dynamics in the game as well. Because if we came up with a puzzle, there had to be a logical reason for it. You know, why does the person have to do this? Well, because then it turns on the power so that they're able to do this. You know, that kind of thing was always in the thread, but we had to be careful because it had to fit also with who the character arcs and what they're going through. So there was a constant back and forth. So it's very difficult to say that there was one first, you know, what came first. It was kind of in parallel, that we were working together all the time. So the writer sometimes would say, you know, because you did it this way, maybe it would be better to put this particular point in the story a little bit later, you know, that kind of thing. So I wasn't totally implicated in the actual writing of it, obviously, because, you know, it was all about the vision all the time. I was thinking visually, but of course we had a lot of meetings and we discussed this a lot. So I'd hear how the story was evolving as it was going along. And so it kind of went like that.
And of course the writer was Mary DeMauer.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mary's fantastic. Yeah.
And
it was, I was so thrilled to hear that she came to UB after being at Presto for Exile, that we had that continuity. I thought that was absolutely wonderful, as I'm sure a lot of people.
And a great person to work with also.
Yeah. She was my go-to person if I had any questions about Myst. It was like,
yeah, she's phenomenal. Yep. And she, just for people that don't know, she did the I think the Myst III and Myst IV player guides. She did all the flavor and culture texts and parts of that. So she worked really closely with I can't remember the name. They just went out of business, which is really sad. But they used to do all the game guides. Oh, someone in the chat's probably yelling at me, but anyway, Prima, thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, the final question, because we have 5 minutes left. It's gone really quickly. So thank you all for being here so much. But the final question is for Brian, which is, in your blurb on your Mysterium bio, you mentioned that most of your YouTube appearances are for Cirrus. Was the popularity of this character and this role for you surprising?
It was. I mean, I've had like a very below the radar career. For 20 plus years, I was able to support myself doing this, but nothing really kind of like a breakthrough. But this was the only fan mail I'd ever gotten. I'd get from my agent, a letter came for you, and it was a fan mail. It was fan mail from like Germany or Romania or from Tokyo. So I got about 6 or 7 fan like mail back in the day, it was mail, which was amazing. And then, yeah, there was kind of a mashup. There's a mashup on YouTube. I don't know if it's still there. I was like, Cirrus is on every channel. And somebody had gone to my agent's website and they found my commercial demo reel, which I've done, like I said, a lot of radio commercials.
Right.
And they kind of like mixed it in with scenes of Cirrus and me doing all these wacky voices for various commercials. So that's fun. I mean, I've done
fantastic.
movies where you know, you can find snippets of stuff that I've done, but Myst obviously is such a big fan following that some people have found it fun to take little pieces and make their own take on it.
Well, we hope that each of you will consider coming back to Mysterium at some point in the future, because I've absolutely loved this. The reaction in the chats has been excellent too. So thank you.
Do I have a time for a tiny anecdote?
Yeah, absolutely, you do. Yes.
So within this year, my son, my younger son, decided to play Raven again. You know?
Riven,
so
okay.
So he's playing Raven, and then suddenly he said, "Oh, damn, I'm sorry, I'm stuck." You know,
Gosh, darn it.
When you had to open the door, and behind the door there was the
button, the white button. It's the bane of our existence. Oh, I know.
I'm stuck, and I don't want to look online, and so I went and I got a book where all my experience, you know, at that time when you were playing.
Oh, your journal. Yeah, your diary when you're playing the game.
And
yeah.
I took my journal and I showed him and I said, there's my journal. And he looked and said, oh my God, you still have that? And yeah, of course, I still have my Myst journals. You know, it's something I will keep forever.
So that white button, I have to say, to add on to your anecdote, is if it wasn't for that white button in Riven, I might not be here right now doing this or have this career, because it's because of that I got stuck. It's because of that I found Cyan Chat and started to meet all the Myst fans. That's the puzzle. And that's the reason, that's why we even, you know, at the time we asked Jeeves where to get hints for Myst, and Cyan Chat came up. So there I was. And of course, and there's a ton of people probably watching this who were there that day, just started meeting all these fantastic human beings across the planet and fell in love with the community. And yeah, even though we all adored the games, I think when we all met each other and fellow fans, that's where the real romance began and why we're all here still 22 years later talking about it. So thank you all for being part of that amazing experience that we've all had and continue to have with the worlds that Cyan's creating for us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting.
It's a pleasure.
This has been great.
Oh yeah, thank you. It's a labor of love for sure. So Dan, if you want me to give any announcements or anything, but I would just say thanks to everybody who watched, and thank you for your great questions. And then next we have, in about half an hour, we have the Myst State of the Union with Kelly moderating, Cyan's Eric and Hannah talking to you about everything Cyan's been doing. So you won't want to miss that.
Ooh.
Thank you so much, Brian, Meinert, and Geneviève.
Shushu. Bye, Shoo.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.